Far beyond the edge of the known systems, in a region of space that most maps simply marked as empty, something moved through the darkness. It was not a comet. It was not a piece of space rock. It was something far bigger, far stranger, and far more frightening. The object drifted slowly, like it had all the time in the world. It did not rush. It did not hide. It simply existed, huge and silent, cutting through the black void like a wound that refused to heal. An alien scout ship called the Vera Sail was the first to notice it. The scout ship belonged to a small trading group known as the Doss Union, a peaceful people who mostly avoided conflict and preferred quiet trade routes far from danger. Their scanner operator, a young alien named Tulka, blinked twice at his screen thinking his equipment was broken. "That can't be right," Tulka muttered. His captain, an older alien named Farron, walked over, his four eyes narrowing at the reading. "What is it?" "Size reading, it's almost the size of a small moon," Tulka said, his voice shaking slightly. "But it's moving. It's not a moon. It's a ship." Farron stared at the screen for a long moment. Ships that large were not supposed to exist. Not in any records his people had ever collected. Not even the largest warships built by the most powerful empires in the galaxy came close to this size. "Get a visual," Farron ordered. The screen flickered, and then the image appeared. The object was not smooth. It was not shaped like a proper ship should be. Instead, it looked like pieces of metal fused together over many, many years. Its surface was covered in deep scars, burn marks, and patches that clearly did not match each other. Some sections looked ancient, rusted and cracked. Other sections looked newer, though still rough and unpolished. There were no elegant curves, no shining lights announcing peaceful intentions, no clear symbols of any known government or empire. It looked, in every sense of the word, like a monster built from scrap and survival. "By the stars," Farron whispered. "What kind of people build something like that?" Tulka's fingers trembled slightly over his console. "Sir, it's not broadcasting any signal. No greeting, no warning beacon, nothing. It's just moving." "Send a standard greeting message," Farron ordered. "Let's not take chances." Tulka sent the message, a simple universal greeting used across many trade routes. A peaceful signal meant to say, "We mean no harm, please respond." No response came. Minutes passed. The silence stretched longer and longer, and with every passing second the crew of the Vera Sail grew more uneasy. The massive ship did not slow down. It did not speed up. It simply continued forward, as if the smaller scout ship did not exist at all. Farron made a decision. "Back away slowly. We are not equipped to deal with whatever that is. Send a report to the Union Council immediately. Tell them we found something that should not exist." As the Vera Sail retreated into the shadows of space, its crew stared at the giant vessel one last time before it disappeared into the darkness. None of them knew it yet, but they had just witnessed the beginning of something that would shake the entire galaxy. They had just seen humanity's message to the stars. Deep inside the giant ship, far from the fear and confusion it caused outside, life continued exactly as it always had. The ship was called the Ark Hollow, and to the people who lived inside it, it was not a monster. It was not a terrifying weapon drifting through space. It was simply home. 200 years ago, Earth had faced disaster after disaster. Rising oceans swallowed coastal cities. Storms grew stronger and more frequent. Resources became scarce, and countries fought over what little remained. In the middle of this chaos, a group of engineers, scientists, and survivors came together with one final plan: build a ship massive enough, strong enough, and self-sufficient enough to carry humanity away from a dying world. They did not have time to make it beautiful. They did not have resources to make it elegant. They used whatever materials they could find: old military ships, industrial equipment, salvaged parts from abandoned cities, and welded it all together into one giant sprawling vessel. It was not built to impress anyone. It was built to survive, no matter what. And so, the Ark Hollow was born, a ship shaped by desperation, hope, and hard sacrifice. Now, generations later, Thousands of humans lived inside its metal walls, working, growing food in hydroponic farms, raising children, and slowly forgetting just how strange and frightening their home might look to outsiders. On the ship's main bridge, Captain Elena Reyes stood with her hands resting on the cold metal railing, staring out at the endless stars through the reinforced window. She was in her early 40s, with sharp eyes and calm confidence that came from a lifetime spent aboard this ship. She had been born within these walls. Her mother had been born within these walls. Even her grandmother, one of the last people to remember Earth directly, had spent most of her life here. To Elena, the scars on the ship's hull were not signs of ugliness or danger. They were history, proof of every storm the ship had survived, every crisis it had overcome. "Another quiet day," said Elena's second-in-command, a tall man named Marcus Chen, as he approached from behind. He held a data tablet in one hand, scrolling through routine reports. Life support system stable. Food production on schedule. No incoming threats detected. Elena allowed herself a small smile. "Let's hope it stays that way." Marcus chuckled softly. "With our luck, don't count on it." Life aboard the Ark Hollow followed familiar rhythms. In the lower decks, farmers tended endless rows of hydroponic plants, growing vegetables and grains under artificial light. In the engineering sections, technicians worked tirelessly to maintain ancient machinery that had been repaired and rebuilt, more times than anyone could count. Children attended lessons in makeshift classrooms, learning not just mathematics and science, but also the history of Earth, a planet none of them had ever seen with their own eyes. Elena often visited the ship's small memorial hall, a quiet room filled with old photographs, letters, and recordings from the first generation who had built the Ark Hollow. She would stand there sometimes, staring at faded images of cities that no longer existed, oceans that had reclaimed entire coastlines, and faces of people long since gone. Her grandmother, before passing away many years ago, used to tell her stories about those final days on Earth. "We didn't build this ship to be pretty," her grandmother once said, her voice weathered with age. "We built it because we had no other choice. Every scar on this ship's hull tells you we survived something that should have killed us." Elena had carried those words with her every single day since becoming captain. Now, standing on the bridge, watching the quiet stars stretch endlessly before her, she had no idea just how much those words were about to matter. The alarm blared suddenly, sharp and urgent, cutting through the calm atmosphere of the bridge like a knife. "Unknown contact detected," the ship's AI announced, its calm mechanical voice a stark contrast to the sudden tension filling the room. "Multiple vessels approaching from starboard side. Formation pattern suggests military configuration." Elena's posture straightened immediately, years of training kicking in without hesitation. "Put it on screen." The main display flickered to life, showing 3 sleek, elegant ships approaching from the darkness. Unlike the Ark Hollow, these vessels were smooth, polished, and clearly built with advanced technology and careful design. Blue lights pulsed gently along their hulls, a stark contrast to the rough, scarred surface of the human ship. "Distance closing," the AI reported. "Estimated arrival, 12 minutes. Marcus glanced at Elena, his expression serious but not panicked. "First contact protocol?" Elena nodded firmly. "Alert all decks. Non-essential personnel to safety stations. Keep it calm. No need to cause panic." As the message spread through the ship's communication system, people paused their daily routines, listening carefully. Farmers looked up from their crops. Engineers stopped their repairs. Children in classrooms glanced nervously at their teachers, sensing the sudden shift in mood. But there was no panic, only quiet readiness. This was not the first time strange contacts had been detected in the vast emptiness of space, though it was certainly the closest and most direct approach they had ever experienced. Elena took a deep breath, steadying herself. "Let them come," she said quietly, more to herself than anyone else. "We are not afraid." Aboard the lead alien vessel, tension filled the command deck as well. Commander Dral Voss, a seasoned officer from the Ythar Coalition, stared intently at the massive human ship growing larger on his view screen with every passing moment. Around him, His crew worked diligently, running scans and gathering data, their movements sharp and precise. "Sir," said one of his officers, a younger alien named Perrin, his voice hesitant, "sensor readings are unusual." "Explain," Drawl said firmly, his eyes never leaving the screen. "The ship's hull composition doesn't match anything in our records. Multiple layers of reinforced metal, clearly repaired and rebuilt countless times. Weapon systems detected, though outdated by our standards, they still appear operational and dangerous." Drawl's eyes narrowed as he studied the massive vessel ahead. It was nothing like the elegant, streamlined ships his people were accustomed to encountering. Instead, it looked rugged, brutal, almost primitive in its raw, unpolished appearance. Yet, despite its rough exterior, something about its sheer size and the confidence of its steady approach sent a chill down his spine. "What kind of species builds something like this?" Perrin asked quietly, almost to himself. Drawl did not answer immediately. He had heard rumors, whispered stories passed between traders and explorers, about a mysterious species from a distant, forgotten corner of the galaxy, a species known simply as humans. Few had ever encountered them directly, and fewer still had returned with clear information. "Bring us closer," Drawl finally ordered. "But maintain defensive readiness. We don't know what we're dealing with yet." As his ships approached cautiously, Drawl couldn't shake the growing unease settling in his chest. Something about this ship felt different, dangerous, unpredictable, and he was about to find out exactly how right he was. Back aboard the Ark Hollow, Elena watched calmly as the alien ships closed the distance, their elegant forms now clearly visible on the main screen. "They're hailing us," Marcus announced, his voice steady, despite the obvious tension in the room. Elena straightened her uniform, taking a moment to compose herself. "Open the channel." The screen flickered, revealing the image of Commander Drawl Voss, his pale blue skin and sharp, cautious eyes studying her carefully. Behind him, his crew stood alert, clearly ready for anything. "Unknown vessel," Drawl said, his voice translated smoothly into clear, understandable English by advanced universal translators. "Identify yourselves immediately. State your intentions." Elena stepped forward, meeting his gaze directly, her expression calm and unwavering. "We are humans," she said clearly. "We come from a planet called Earth. We are not here to cause harm. We are simply travelers." Drawl studied her closely, his eyes flickering briefly toward the scars and rough patches visible along the edges of the human ship's hull, visible even through the video feed. "Your vessel does not resemble a traveler's ship," he said carefully. "It appears more suited for war, built to endure destruction rather than peaceful exploration." Elena did not flinch or deny his observation. "This ship was built during difficult times," she replied honestly. "We do not hide our history, nor are we ashamed of it." Drawl's expression remained guarded, his eyes narrowing slightly as he considered her words carefully. Behind him, one of his officers leaned forward, whispering something urgent into his ear. Drawl's posture stiffened almost imperceptibly. "Our scanners indicate your vessel holds significant destructive capability," Drawl said slowly, his tone measured but firm. "Enough power to potentially destroy a small planet. Explain this." The bridge crew of the Ark Hollow remained silent, watching Elena carefully, waiting for her response. She took a slow breath, choosing her words carefully. "We do not use that power unless absolutely necessary," she said calmly. "But we also do not hide from it or pretend it doesn't exist. Our history has taught us that peace without strength can be dangerous, even deadly." Drawl leaned back slightly, his expression thoughtful, cautious. He studied Elena for a long moment, clearly weighing her words carefully. Finally, he spoke again, his voice quieter, more serious. "Are there more vessels like yours out there, hidden somewhere in the darkness?" Elena met his gaze steadily, her voice firm and clear. "No, this is the only ship we have." The alien commander's crew fell into stunned silence at her words. For a brief moment, nobody moved. the tension thick enough to feel through the screen itself. Then Draal spoke once more, his voice lower, almost hesitant now. Then explain to me why your ship's energy signature closely matches historical records of a fleet believed responsible for ending 3 major conflicts. Records belonging to a species we believed had long since vanished from existence. Elena's confident expression faltered slightly, her eyes narrowing with genuine confusion. Behind her, the bridge crew exchanged worried, uncertain glances. What fleet? She asked carefully, her voice steady despite the growing unease settling over the room. Draal's answer, when it finally came, sent a wave of cold shock rushing through every person present on the bridge. The fleet that ended the Kryll War, he said quietly, exactly 100 years ago. Silence fell over the bridge, heavy and suffocating. Elena's mind raced, searching desperately through memories, historical records, anything that might explain what the alien commander had just revealed. But nothing came to mind. No clear answers. No immediate explanations. Marcus leaned closer to her, his voice barely a whisper. Captain, what is he talking about? Elena did not answer immediately. Her eyes remained fixed on the screen, on the cautious, uncertain expression of Commander Draal Voss, a being who clearly believed he had just encountered something far more significant and far more dangerous than a simple group of peaceful travelers. Something about her ship, something buried deep within its history, held secrets even she did not fully understand. And as the silence stretched on, broken only by the quiet hum of the ship's systems, Elena realized with growing unease that whatever answers awaited them, they would change everything she thought she knew about her home, her people, and the true nature of the Ark Hollow itself. Outside, more distant sensors began picking up faint traces of additional ships, gathering quietly in the shadows, drawn by whispers, spreading rapidly across hidden communication channels throughout the galaxy. Word was already traveling fast, passed nervously from system to system, ship to ship, whispered cautiously among frightened crews and curious explorers alike. The monster ship has returned, and nobody, not even Elena herself, truly understood yet just how much that single sentence would soon come to mean. The silence on the bridge of the Ark Hollow stretched on, heavy and unbearable. Elena Reyes stood frozen for a moment, her mind racing through every scrap of history she had ever learned about her people. Nothing made sense. Nothing explained what Commander Draal Voss had just said. The Kryll War, Elena repeated slowly, testing the words on her tongue as if saying them again might unlock some hidden memory. I have never heard of it. Draal's pale blue eyes studied her carefully through the screen, searching her face for any sign of deception. That is either impossible, he said quietly, or deeply troubling. The Kryll War was one of the most devastating conflicts this region of the galaxy has ever known. It reshaped borders, it ended empires, and it ended suddenly and completely because of a single fleet that appeared without warning and vanished just as quickly. Marcus Chen leaned toward Elena, his voice low. Captain, this doesn't match anything in our archives. Elena raised a hand slightly, asking for a moment of quiet. She turned back to the screen. Commander Voss, I understand your concerns, but I promise you, my people know nothing of this war. Our history was fractured when Earth fell silent. We lost decades of records, entire archives destroyed in the chaos before our launch. If our ship carries some connection to this event, it is a connection none of us are aware of. Draal's expression remained skeptical, but something in Elena's voice, the honesty, the confusion in her own eyes, made him pause. He glanced sideways at one of his officers, exchanging a brief, quiet word before turning back to the screen. I will share what we know, Draal said finally. Not because I fully trust you, but because ignorance in this situation serves no one. He gestured, and a moment later data began transferring to the Ark Hollow systems. Marcus quickly pulled it onto a secondary screen, and the bridge crew leaned in, reading carefully. The records were old, fragmented, pieced together from multiple sources across different star systems. They told the story of a brutal war between the Kryll Empire, a powerful and aggressive civilization that had conquered dozens of smaller worlds, and a coalition of smaller nations desperately trying to survive its expansion. For nearly 30 years, the war had raged, one of the bloodiest conflicts recorded in that region of space. Entire planets had been reduced to rubble. Populations had been wiped out. The Kryll Empire seemed unstoppable, growing stronger with every passing year. And then, according to the records, everything changed in a single catastrophic battle. 100 years ago, Draal continued, his voice quieter now, almost reverent. A fleet appeared from outside known space. Nobody had seen ships like them before. They were rough, powerful, and utterly merciless in combat. In a single engagement, this fleet destroyed the Kryll Empire's primary battle group, a force of over 200 warships, in less than 3 hours. Elena felt a chill run through her. 200 warships, she repeated softly. Destroyed, Draal confirmed. Not damaged, not scattered, destroyed. The Kryll Empire never recovered. Within 5 years, their entire government collapsed, and the war ended. And you believe our ship is connected to this fleet? Elena asked carefully. Draal nodded slowly. Your ship's energy signature, the unique pattern created by your engines and weapon systems, matches historical scans taken during that final battle. The match is not perfect, but it is close enough that my superiors will demand answers. Marcus glanced at Elena, his face pale. Captain, if this is true, if our ancestors were part of something like that. Elena raised a hand again, silencing him gently. She turned back to the screen, her expression calm despite the storm of questions swirling in her mind. Commander Voss, I give you my word. Whatever role our ancestors may have played in this war, my people, the ones living now, know nothing about it. We were not seeking to hide this history. We simply do not have it. Draal studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I believe you, Captain Reyes, but belief is not enough. Word of your ship's arrival is already spreading. Many species across this region remember the Kryll War and the fear it created. Some will see your ship as a monster returned. Others will see it as an opportunity. An opportunity for what? Elena asked. Draal's expression darkened slightly. To prove themselves against a legend, or to destroy what they fear before it grows stronger. As the conversation between Elena and Draal continued, word of the strange, massive human ship spread rapidly across the sector. Small trading vessels whispered rumors to each other over hidden communication channels. Scout ships from a dozen different species altered their patrol routes, curious to catch a glimpse of the vessel that was already being called, fearfully, the monster ship. In a distant space station orbiting a quiet trading world, a group of officials from several different governments gathered hastily, alerted by early reports from scouts like the Vera Sail. Among them sat representatives from cautious, peaceful trading nations, as well as officials from more aggressive, militaristic governments who saw every new arrival as either a threat or a target. The size alone is unprecedented, said one official, an alien named Corin, his voice tight with concern. No known civilization builds ships that large, except perhaps the humans, said another, older alien named Vess, his voice grave. There have long been rumors, whispers passed between old traders, about a distant species capable of surviving the collapse of their homeworld and building something enormous to escape. Few believed the stories, fewer still ever encountered them directly. And now one of their ships has appeared carrying an energy signature linked to the Kryll War, Corin said. This cannot be coincidence. A younger representative, nervous and clearly uneasy, spoke up from the back of the room. What if they've come to finish what that fleet started? What if this is the beginning of an invasion? The room fell into tense murmurs, fear spreading quickly among the gathered officials. Vess raised a hand, calling for calm. We do not know their intentions. Overreacting could provoke exactly the disaster we fear. And underreacting could leave us defenseless, Corin countered sharply. The debate continued, voices rising with growing anxiety, as more and more ships across the sector began adjusting their courses, some moving cautiously closer to observe, others retreating rapidly to put as much distance as possible between themselves and the mysterious human vessel. Fear, it seemed, was spreading far faster than facts. Back aboard the Ark Hollow, Elena gathered her senior officers in a private briefing room, away from the busy bridge. Marcus Chen stood beside her, along with Chief Engineer Thomas Alvarez, a broad-shouldered man with calloused hands and a serious expression, and Dr. Amara Singh, the ship's lead historian and archivist. "I need answers," Elena said firmly, addressing the small group. "Dr. Singh, is there anything at all, in our historical archives about a fleet called Task Fleet Vanguard?" Amara shook her head slowly, her expression troubled. "I've already begun searching, Captain. Most of our archives from that era were damaged or lost during Earth's final collapse. We have fragments, partial records, but nothing complete. The name Task Fleet Vanguard does appear briefly in a handful of documents, described only as a deep space defense initiative launched shortly before Earth's final broadcasts stopped." "Defense initiative," Marcus repeated. "That doesn't sound like a fleet capable of destroying 200 warships in 3 hours. "No," Amara agreed quietly. "It doesn't." Tomas leaned forward, his brow furrowed deeply. "Captain, if I may, our ship's core engine systems, the ones we've maintained and repaired for generations, they've always been strange. More advanced than anything else aboard, and frankly, more advanced than anything I've ever seen in any technical manual we possess. I always assumed they were simply well-designed. But what if they weren't just well-designed? What if they were built by people who already knew how to fight a war we've completely forgotten?" Elena absorbed this information carefully, her mind working through the implications. "You're suggesting the Ark Hollow itself, its engines, its weapons, might have originally been part of this Task Fleet Vanguard?" "It's possible," Tomas said carefully. "The ship was assembled quickly using whatever materials were available before Earth's collapse. If military vessels from a fleet like that were repurposed, added into our construction, it would explain a lot. The unusual engine efficiency, the outdated but still incredibly powerful weapon systems. Things we've always simply accepted without fully understanding why they worked so well." The room fell silent for a long moment, everyone absorbing the weight of this possibility. Finally, Elena spoke, her voice steady despite the uncertainty swirling around her. "Regardless of our ship's history, our priority remains the safety of everyone aboard. We will continue forward peacefully, but we will also remain vigilant. Dr. Singh, keep searching the archives. Thomas, check the ship's core systems for anything that might confirm or deny this theory. Marcus, maintain close monitoring of all approaching vessels." Her officers nodded, quickly dispersing to their tasks. As they left, Elena remained behind for a moment, staring out through the small window of the briefing room at the endless stars beyond. "What are we?" she wondered silently. "What did our ancestors do out here so long ago?" Hours later, as the Ark Hollow continued its slow, steady journey through the sector, more ships began appearing on long-range sensors, gathering cautiously at a distance, watching, waiting. Elena stood once again on the bridge, watching the growing crowd of distant vessels with quiet concern. "Status report," she asked calmly. 17 additional ships detected within scanning range," the AI responded. "None currently approaching directly, all maintaining significant distance." "They're afraid," Marcus observed quietly. "Or curious," Elena replied. "Possibly both." Commander Draal Voss's voice suddenly returned over the communication channel, his tone urgent. "Captain Reyes, I must warn you. Word of your ship's arrival and its connection to the Kriel War records has spread faster than I anticipated. Several factions in this region hold deep, lasting grudges from that conflict. Some may see your ship as an opportunity for revenge, believing you responsible for losses suffered generations ago. We are not responsible for a war we didn't fight," Elena said firmly. "Perception matters more than truth in situations like this," Draal warned. "Many will not care about the difference. I recommend increasing your defensive readiness." Elena considered his warning carefully. "Thank you for the warning, Commander. We will remain cautious." As the channel closed, Marcus turned to Elena, his expression tense. "Captain, should we prepare the crew for potential conflict?" Elena took a slow breath, weighing her next words carefully. "Raise shields to standby readiness. Keep weapon systems on standby, not active. I don't want to provoke anyone unnecessarily, but I also won't leave us defenseless." As orders were relayed throughout the ship, a quiet tension settled over the Ark Hollow. Farmers in the hydroponic bays exchanged worried glances. Engineers double-checked emergency systems. Parents gathered their children closer, sensing without fully understanding the growing unease rippling through their home. Elena walked slowly through the corridors of her ship, greeting crew members calmly, offering reassurance despite the uncertainty gripping her own thoughts. She paused near a viewport, staring out at the distant gathering ships, their presence a silent, unspoken threat looming just beyond reach. "We came in peace," she thought quietly. But it seems peace alone may not be enough. Meanwhile, aboard a smaller, heavily armed vessel drifting quietly at the edge of the gathering crowd, a group known as the Drenari Remnant watched the human ship with cold, calculating eyes. Captain Sarek Vaughn, a grizzled veteran with deep scars marking his rough, weathered skin, studied the distant Ark Hollow through his ship's viewport, his expression hard and unreadable. "That's the ship," one of his officers confirmed quietly. "The one connected to the fleet that destroyed our ancestors' war effort a century ago." Sarek's jaw tightened, old anger flickering behind his eyes. His people, the Drenari, had once been allies of the Kriel Empire, fighting alongside them in the final, desperate years of the war. When the mysterious fleet appeared and shattered the Kriel's forces completely, the Drenari had lost everything: family, homes, entire generations wiped away in the chaos that followed the Empire's collapse. "They claim ignorance," Sarek said quietly, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. "They claim they know nothing of what their ancestors did. Do you believe them?" his officer asked carefully. Sarek's eyes remained fixed on the massive, scarred vessel drifting steadily through space. "It doesn't matter what I believe," he said coldly. "What matters is what they represent. A century of pain, a century of loss. And now they return, as if nothing happened." His officer hesitated, then asked quietly, "What are your orders, Captain?" Sarek's expression hardened further, old grief transforming slowly into cold determination. "We watch. We wait. And when the moment comes," he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper, "we make them understand exactly what they took from us." Behind him, his crew exchanged uneasy glances, sensing the storm building quietly within their captain's heart, a storm that would soon collide directly with the fragile, uncertain peace Elena Reyes was so desperately trying to protect. Far away, aboard the Ark Hollow, unaware of the danger quietly gathering at the edges of the crowd, Elena continued walking through her ship's corridors, offering calm reassurance to her people. But somewhere out in the darkness, old wounds were about to reopen, and the fragile first contact between humanity and the galaxy was about to face its greatest test yet. Night cycle aboard the Ark Hollow brought little rest to Elena Reyes. She sat alone in her quarters, a small room filled with old photographs, a worn blanket passed down from her grandmother, and a single dim light glowing above her desk. Sleep would not come. Her mind kept circling back to the same question over and over again. What were we, before we became this? A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. Dr. Amara Singh's voice came through the comm system, tense with excitement. "Captain, I think you need to see this. I found something." Elena rose quickly, pulling her uniform jacket over her shoulders. "I'm on my way." Minutes later, she stood in the ship's archive room, a quiet chamber filled with old data drives, storage units, and screens displaying fragments of Earth's final years. Amara stood beside a console, her eyes tired but alert, having clearly spent hours searching through the ship's oldest records. "What did you find?" Elena asked. Amara pulled up a file on the main screen, an old military document, faded and damaged but still partially readable. "This was buried deep in the archive, mislabeled and forgotten. It's a partial roster, a list of ships assigned to something called Task Fleet Vanguard." Elena leaned closer, scanning the document carefully. Most of the text was corrupted, gaps and missing sections scattered throughout, but certain words remained clear enough to read. Deployment authorization, Deep Space Defense Initiative, Experimental Weapons Program. Classified. Experimental weapons, Elena repeated softly. Amara, what exactly was this fleet built to do? Amara hesitated, scrolling further down the document. Based on what little I can piece together, it seems Task Fleet Vanguard was created during Earth's final decade, when resources were running out and countries were fighting over what remained. Several nations combined their most advanced military technology into a single unified defense force. Their goal was survival, protecting what remained of humanity's space programs from being destroyed by other desperate nations. So they weren't meant to attack anyone, Elena said slowly. They were meant to defend. That appears to be the original intention, yes, Amara confirmed. But there's more. She pulled up a second file, this one even more damaged than the first. Only a few lines remained legible. Final transmission. Fleet redirected beyond known space. Coordinates unknown. Contact lost. Elena stared at the words for a long moment. They left Earth's system entirely, before the final collapse. It would explain everything, Amara said quietly. If this fleet traveled far beyond our system, encountering other civilizations, defending itself against threats we know nothing about, it's possible they became involved in conflicts far from home, including perhaps the Cryel War. Elena sat down slowly, absorbing the weight of this discovery. And when Earth finally collapsed completely, all communication lost, this fleet would have been stranded alone, with no home to return to. Which raises another question, Amara said carefully. What happened to that fleet afterward? And could any connection exist between their disappearance and the construction of our own ship? Elena's eyes drifted toward the far wall of the archive room, where old faded photographs of the Ark Hollow's original construction hung, showing exhausted engineers working desperately to build their escape from a dying world. Thomas mentioned our engine system seemed too advanced, too efficient for what we should have been capable of building at the time, Elena said slowly. What if some of Task Fleet Vanguard's surviving ships eventually found their way back, joining the construction effort before Earth's final broadcast? Amara's expression grew troubled. It's possible, Captain, if parts of their fleet, their weapons, their technology, were incorporated into our ship's construction, it would explain the strange, unexplainable capabilities we've always simply accepted without question. Elena rubbed her temples, feeling the weight of generations of forgotten history pressing down upon her. Keep searching, Amara. I need to understand exactly what we are, and what our ancestors may have done out here, long before any of us were born. As Amara returned to her work, Elena stepped out into the quiet corridor, her mind heavy with questions that seemed to multiply faster than answers could be found. Meanwhile, word of the Ark Hollow's connection to the legendary Creel War fleet continued spreading rapidly across neighboring systems, carried through hidden communication relays, whispered nervously between traders, and debated fiercely among various governments and factions. Aboard a large, well-defended space station known as Korvath Station, a central hub for trade and diplomacy in the region, an emergency council meeting had been called. Dozens of representatives from different species and governments gathered in a large circular chamber, their expressions ranging from cautious curiosity to outright fear. At the head of the chamber stood Ambassador Kelvorn, an elderly, respected diplomat from the Ithar coalition, the same government commander Dral Voss served under. His voice carried authority as he addressed the gathered representatives. Colleagues, I understand the fear this news has caused, Kelvorn began, his tone measured and calm despite the tension filling the room. But I urge caution before we make any hasty decisions. Commander Voss's reports indicate the humans aboard this vessel show no immediate hostile intentions. Their captain claims genuine ignorance regarding their ship's connection to the Creel War. Ignorance or deception? Interrupted a sharp voice from across the chamber. It belonged to a representative from a smaller, more aggressive faction known as the Zeth Compact, a government still bearing deep scars from their own losses during the war. We cannot risk our safety based on the word of a species we know almost nothing about. Murmurs of agreement rippled through parts of the chamber. Kelvorn raised a hand, calling for order. Overreaction risks provoking exactly the disaster we hope to avoid. This vessel possesses considerable defensive capability. Attacking without clear justification could result in devastating consequences, both immediate and long-term. And allowing them to move freely through our territory unchallenged risks even greater consequences, the Zeth representative countered sharply. If this fleet truly ended the Kryl Empire, imagine what damage a single ship like this could cause if provoked or if it harbors hidden intentions we cannot yet see. The debate continued, voices rising with growing intensity, fear and uncertainty fueling increasingly heated arguments. Some representatives called for immediate diplomatic engagement, seeking to establish peaceful relations before tensions escalated further. Others demanded immediate military mobilization, determined to meet this potential threat with overwhelming force before it could grow more dangerous. Amidst the chaos, a quiet, calculating figure remained silent near the back of the chamber, listening carefully to every word spoken. Representative Voth Kane, an official from the shadowy Drenari remnant, watched the debate unfold with cold, patient eyes. He had no interest in diplomatic solutions. His people had waited a century for justice, for revenge against the fleet and the species responsible for shattering their world. And now, finally, that opportunity had arrived. Quietly, without drawing attention to himself, Voth slipped out of the chamber, already composing a private, encrypted message to Captain Sarek Vaughn, waiting patiently aboard his heavily armed vessel near the Ark Hollow. The council remains divided, the message read. They will hesitate. We will not. Prepare your ship. The moment approaches. Back aboard the Ark Hollow, Elena continued her rounds through the ship, offering calm reassurance to her worried crew, despite the storm of uncertainty swirling within her own thoughts. She paused near the ship's observation deck, a large chamber with reinforced windows offering a breathtaking view of the stars beyond. Her daughter Maya, a bright, curious girl of only 12 years old, sat quietly near the window, sketching the distant stars in a worn notebook. Elena smiled softly, moving to sit beside her. Having trouble sleeping too? Elena asked gently. Maya glanced up, her expression thoughtful. I heard some of the crew talking about monsters and old wars and ships that shouldn't exist. Is it true, Mom? Are we really connected to something like that? Elena hesitated, choosing her words carefully. We're still trying to understand exactly what happened, sweetheart. But whatever our ancestors did, long before any of us were born, it doesn't define who we are now. Maya considered this quietly, staring back out at the stars. But what if the aliens out there don't see it that way? What if they only see the monster, and not us? Elena placed a gentle hand on her daughter's shoulder. Then we'll show them who we really are, through our actions, not our history. Maya nodded slowly, though uncertainty still lingered in her young eyes. Elena stayed with her a while longer, watching the quiet stars together, before finally returning to her duties. As she walked back toward the bridge, Marcus approached quickly, his expression tense. Captain, we've received new information from Commander Voss. Elena's brow furrowed. What is it? He's warning us again, more urgently this time. Apparently, the diplomatic council overseeing the situation remains divided, unable to agree on a clear course of action. Voss believes certain factions might act independently, without official approval. Elena's stomach tightened. The Drenari remnant. Marcus nodded grimly. Voss specifically mentioned them. He says they've been growing increasingly aggressive in their rhetoric, blaming humanity directly for losses suffered during the Kryl War. Elena took a deep breath, steadying herself against the growing tension. Increase our defensive readiness quietly, without alarming the crew unnecessarily. I don't want panic, but I also don't want us caught off guard. As Marcus relayed her orders, Elena stepped onto the bridge, her eyes immediately drawn to the main screen, where dozens of distant ships continued gathering cautiously at the edges of scanning range. Status report, she asked calmly. 23 vessels currently within extended scanning range, the AI reported. No immediate hostile action detected, However, one vessel, registered under Drenari remnant identification codes, has altered its position significantly, moving closer than previously observed. Elena's eyes narrowed slightly. "Show me." The screen adjusted, highlighting a single heavily armed ship drifting quietly closer to the Ark Hollow. Its weapon systems, though not yet active, clearly visible even at a distance. "Captain," Marcus said quietly. "Should we hail them directly?" Elena considered this carefully. Direct contact might ease tensions, or it might provoke exactly the confrontation they were trying desperately to avoid. "Not yet," she decided finally. "Continue monitoring closely. If they make any aggressive movement, alert me immediately." As the bridge crew returned to their stations, quietly monitoring the gathering ships, Elena remained standing near the main screen, her eyes fixed on the distant, silent vessel drifting steadily closer. Somewhere out there, old wounds, old grief, and old anger were quietly gathering, preparing to collide directly with humanity's fragile first steps into the wider galaxy. Hours passed slowly, tension building steadily aboard the Ark Hollow as more ships continued gathering at the edges of scanning range. Elena remained on the bridge, refusing to leave despite Marcus's gentle suggestions that she rest. "Captain, you've been awake for over 20 hours," Marcus said quietly, concern clear in his voice. "You need rest." Elena shook her head firmly. "Not now, Marcus, not with so much uncertainty surrounding us." Before Marcus could respond further, the AI's voice suddenly interrupted, sharp and urgent. "Captain, unidentified vessel accelerating rapidly. Trajectory suggests direct approach toward the Ark Hollow." Elena's eyes snapped immediately to the main screen, watching as the previously distant, silent Drenari vessel suddenly surged forward, weapon systems activating rapidly. "That's Captain Vaughn's ship," Marcus said, his voice tight with tension. "Captain, they're powering weapons." Elena's jaw tightened, years of calm leadership settling firmly over her growing concern. "Raise shields immediately. Alert all decks, but do not fire unless directly fired upon." As alarms began sounding softly throughout the ship, crew members quickly moved to emergency stations, sensing without fully understanding the sudden shift from cautious tension to immediate danger. On the main screen, the Drenari vessel continued its rapid approach, weapons fully charged, its intentions clear despite the lack of direct communication. Elena stood firm at the center of her bridge, watching the approaching threat with steady, unwavering resolve. "We came here in peace," she thought quietly, bracing herself for whatever confrontation awaited. "But it seems peace alone may no longer be enough to protect us." The Drenari ship's weapon systems locked directly onto the Ark Hollow, and somewhere deep within that vessel, Captain Sarek Vaughn stared coldly at the massive human ship ahead, his heart heavy with a century of grief and anger finally reaching its breaking point. "Fire," he ordered quietly. And in that single, tense moment, the fragile peace between humanity and the wider galaxy hung suspended, teetering dangerously on the very edge of disaster. "Fire," Captain Sarek Vaughn ordered quietly, his voice cold and steady despite the storm of grief and anger burning behind his eyes. A single beam of concentrated energy shot across the darkness of space, streaking directly toward the massive hull of the Ark Hollow. On the bridge of the human ship, alarms blared as the AI's voice cut through the tension. "Direct hit incoming, impact in 3 seconds." Elena Reyes gripped the edge of the console, bracing herself. "Brace for impact." The shot struck the ship's outer hull with a deep, thunderous shudder. Sparks flew from a nearby console, and the lights flickered briefly before stabilizing. Crew members grabbed onto railings and chairs, steadying themselves against the force of the blast. "Damage report," Elena demanded, her voice sharp but controlled. "Hull integrity at 94%, the AI reported calmly. "No critical systems affected. Shields absorbed most of the impact." Marcus Chen looked up from his console, his expression tense. "Captain, they're preparing to fire again." Elena's mind raced. Every instinct told her to retaliate, to protect her ship and her people with full force. But she remembered her grandmother's words echoing through the years. "Strength without wisdom is destruction." "Hold fire," she ordered firmly. Do not return the attack yet. Marcus stared at her in disbelief. Captain, they just attacked us directly. If we respond with full force, we prove every fear they already have about us. Elena interrupted, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. I need a moment to try something else first. She turned to the communications officer. Open a direct channel to that ship. Now. The officer worked quickly, and moments later the screen flickered to life, showing the hardened, scarred face of Captain Sarek Vaughn. Behind him, his crew stood ready, weapon systems fully charged. Captain Vaughn, Elena said, her voice calm but firm, we do not wish to fight you. I understand your people suffered greatly during the Creel War, but my crew and I had no part in that conflict. We didn't even know of its existence until a few hours ago. Sarek's eyes narrowed, old fury simmering just beneath the surface. Words mean nothing, he said coldly. Your ship, your fleet, destroyed everything my people built. Homes, families, generations of history, gone in a single afternoon. And you expect me to believe you know nothing? I understand your anger, Elena replied carefully. Grief like that doesn't simply disappear, but attacking us now will not bring back what you lost. It will only create more loss, more grief, for both our peoples. For a brief moment something flickered behind Sarek's hardened expression, a flash of hesitation, quickly buried beneath years of accumulated pain and anger. You may not have pulled the trigger, Sarek said quietly, but your people did, and someone must answer for that. Before Elena could respond further, Sarek's expression hardened completely, and the channel abruptly closed. Captain, the AI announced immediately, the Drenari vessel is charging weapons for a second attack. Power levels significantly higher than the first strike. Elena's stomach tightened. This next attack would not simply test their shields. It was clearly meant to cause serious damage. All hands brace for impact, Elena ordered, her voice steady despite the danger closing in rapidly. Aboard Commander Dral Voss's ship, still monitoring the situation closely from a cautious distance, tension filled the command deck as his crew watched the unfolding confrontation. Sir, the Drenari vessel is preparing a second strike, Perrin reported urgently. Power readings suggest this attack is designed to cripple, not just test, the human ship's defenses. Dral's jaw tightened. He had hoped diplomacy might prevail, that cooler heads would guide this delicate situation. But watching Sarek Vaughn's ship prepare for a devastating second attack, he realized diplomacy alone would not be enough. Hail the Drenari vessel, Dral ordered sharply. Immediately. Moments later, Sarek Vaughn's face appeared on a secondary screen, his expression hard and unyielding. Captain Vaughn, Dral said firmly, stand down. The Council has not authorized any military action against this vessel. You are acting outside official sanction. The Council can debate for years, Sarek replied coldly. My people cannot wait that long for justice. This is not justice, Dral argued. This is revenge, and it will bring only further destruction to your people and possibly to this entire region. Sarek's eyes flashed with anger. You did not lose what I lost, Commander. You did not watch your homeworld burn while so-called peaceful negotiations dragged on for years. I will not stand by and let this opportunity slip away. The channel closed abruptly, leaving Dral staring grimly at the empty screen. He turned quickly to his crew. Move us closer. If Vaughn will not stand down, we may need to intervene directly. Sir, intervening directly could be seen as taking sides in an unauthorized conflict, Perrin warned cautiously. I am aware of the risk, Dral said firmly. But allowing an unprovoked attack to escalate unchecked is a far greater danger. As Dral's ship began moving cautiously closer to the unfolding confrontation, tension continued building rapidly across the entire region, dozens of distant ships now watching closely, uncertain how this dangerous standoff would ultimately unfold. Back aboard the Ark Hollow, the bridge crew braced tensely as the Drenari vessel's second attack approached. Elena stood firm at the center of the bridge, her eyes fixed steadily on the main screen. Impact in 5 seconds, the AI announced. Divert all available power to forward shields, Elena ordered quickly. The ship's systems responded instantly, redirecting power throughout the vessel. A moment later, the second attack struck, far more powerful than the first. The entire ship shuddered violently, lights flickering across every deck as alarms blared loudly. Hull integrity down to 81%, the AI reported urgently. Shield generators sustaining significant strain. Marcus gripped his console tightly, steadying himself against the shaking deck. Captain, if they hit us again with that much force, our shields might not hold. Elena's mind raced, weighing every option carefully. Returning fire now, especially with the ship's considerable weapon systems, could easily destroy the Drenari vessel completely, but doing so would confirm every fear the wider galaxy already held about humanity, proving them exactly the monster many believed them to be. Divert additional power to shields, Elena ordered instead. Prepare a defensive countermeasure, non-lethal if possible. I want their weapons disabled, not their ship destroyed. Tomas Alvarez's voice came urgently over the comm system from engineering. Captain, I can redirect a precise energy pulse through our secondary weapon array. It should be enough to disable their weapon systems without causing serious damage to their ship, but I need a few minutes to configure it properly. You have 1 minute, Thomas, Elena said firmly. Make it work. As engineering scrambled to prepare the precise countermeasure, the Drenari vessel's weapons began charging once more, clearly preparing a third, potentially devastating strike. Captain, the AI reported, Drenari vessel weapons approaching maximum charge. This attack appears designed for maximum damage, possibly targeting critical systems directly. Elena's heart pounded, but her voice remained steady. Thomas, status report. Almost ready, Captain, Thomas replied urgently. Just a few more seconds. The Drenari vessel's weapons reached full charge, ready to unleash a devastating, potentially crippling strike directly at the Ark Hollow's most vulnerable systems. Captain, Marcus said urgently, they're about to fire. Tomas, Elena called sharply. Ready. Tomas's voice confirmed immediately. Fire the countermeasure, now. Aboard Sarek Vaughn's ship, his weapon systems reached full charge, ready to unleash a devastating strike aimed directly at disabling the human vessel's engines and critical systems completely. Fire! Sarek ordered coldly, his voice carrying a century of accumulated grief and fury. But before his ship's weapons could discharge, a precise, controlled pulse of energy shot rapidly from the Ark Hollow, striking directly at his ship's weapon systems with pinpoint accuracy. Sparks erupted violently across his ship's console, and alarms blared loudly throughout his vessel. Weapons systems disabled, one of his officers reported urgently, disbelief clear in his voice. Direct hit to our primary weapon array. We've lost offensive capability completely. Sarek stared at his own darkened console in stunned silence, disbelief slowly giving way to confusion. He had expected devastating retaliation, overwhelming force meant to destroy his ship completely. Instead, the human vessel had responded with precise, controlled restraint, disabling his weapons without causing any further damage to his ship or crew. They could have destroyed us completely, his officer said quietly, clearly shaken by the unexpected turn of events. Why didn't they? Sarek had no immediate answer, his mind struggling to reconcile this unexpected restraint with the monstrous reputation he had carried in his heart for over a century. Aboard the Ark Hollow, tension slowly eased as the immediate danger passed. Elena let out a slow breath, relief washing over her briefly before quickly refocusing on the situation at hand. Status report, she asked calmly. Drenari vessel's weapon systems completely disabled, the AI confirmed. No further offensive capability detected. Their ship remains otherwise undamaged. Marcus turned to Elena, clear admiration in his expression. Captain, that was incredibly precise. You could have destroyed them completely, and instead... We proved something more important, Elena interrupted quietly. We proved exactly who we are, not through destruction, but through restraint. As the bridge crew began standing down from their defensive stations, Commander Dral Voss's ship arrived quickly at the scene, having witnessed the entire confrontation from a cautious distance. His voice came urgently over the comm system. "Captain Reyes, are you and your crew all right?" "We're fine, Commander," Elena replied calmly. "Minor damage. Nothing critical." Dral's voice carried clear astonishment. "You disabled their weapons without destroying their ship. Many would have responded far more aggressively, especially against an unprovoked attack." "We are not here to prove ourselves through violence," Elena replied firmly. "We are here to prove that strength does not require cruelty." There was a brief pause before Dral responded again, his voice quieter, more thoughtful. "Perhaps, Captain Reyes, your people truly are different from what the old records suggest." As the tension slowly eased across the region, distant ships that had gathered cautiously nearby began transmitting quiet messages of curiosity and cautious respect, word spreading rapidly of the human ship's surprising restraint, despite considerable provocation. But aboard his now defenseless vessel, Captain Sarek Vaughn stared silently at the massive human ship through his viewport, his heart heavy with conflicting emotions, old grief slowly mingling with confusion, and reluctant, unexpected respect. He had expected a monster. Instead, he had witnessed something far more complicated and far more dangerous to the fear and hatred he had carried for so long. As his ship drifted silently away, defenseless but unharmed, Sarek Vaughn realized quietly that his understanding of the world and of the humans he had hated for so long had just been shaken to its very core. And somewhere far beyond the edges of this tense confrontation, word continued spreading rapidly across the galaxy, whispered cautiously from system to system, ship to ship. The monster ship had shown mercy, but not everyone watching from the shadows would see this restraint as reason for peace. For some, it would only serve as proof that humanity's true intentions remained dangerously unclear, a mystery that demanded far closer and far more dangerous examination. News of the confrontation spread rapidly across the region, carried through hidden communication relays, whispered between trading ships, and debated fiercely in council chambers, scattered throughout dozens of star systems. The story took many different shapes as it traveled, twisted and reshaped by fear, curiosity, and old grudges alike. But one detail remained consistent no matter who told it. The monster ship had been attacked without provocation, and instead of destroying its attacker completely, it had shown restraint. Aboard Korvath Station, Ambassador Kelvorn stood once again before the gathered council, his expression carefully composed despite the storm of reactions rippling through the chamber. "This changes things," Kelvorn said firmly, addressing the assembled representatives. Captain Vaughn acted without authorization, attacking a vessel that had done nothing but attempt peaceful communication. And in response, the humans chose restraint over destruction, despite possessing more than enough power to end the confrontation permanently. The representative from the Zeth Compact, still visibly uneasy, crossed his arms tightly. "Restraint once does not erase a century of fear," he said sharply. "It could simply be strategy, an attempt to appear peaceful while gathering information about our defenses. Or it could be exactly what it appears to be," Kelvorn countered calmly. "An act of genuine restraint from a people trying to prove they are not the monster history remembers." Murmurs spread through the chamber, representatives exchanging uncertain glances. The debate that followed was quieter than before, less driven by panic, more thoughtful and considered. Slowly, carefully, the tone of the room began shifting, fear giving way gradually to cautious curiosity. Near the back of the chamber, Voth Kaney watched the changing mood with quiet frustration. His plan, carefully arranged through Sarek Vaughn's unauthorized attack, had been meant to provoke chaos, to force a violent response that would confirm every fear the galaxy held about humanity. Instead, it had backfired completely, creating sympathy rather than suspicion. Quietly, he slipped from the chamber once more, his mind already working on a new plan. If a single attack could not provoke the response he needed, perhaps something larger, something impossible to restrain, would finally reveal the true monster he still believed slept within that massive, scarred ship. Aboard the Ark Hollow, Elena Reyes stood on the bridge watching quietly as reports continued arriving from across the region. The tension that had gripped her ship for the past day had not disappeared entirely, but it had softened, replaced by a cautious, uncertain calm. "Captain," Marcus said, approaching with a data tablet in hand. "Reports indicate the council at Korvath Station is shifting toward a more favorable view of us. Commander Voss's testimony regarding the confrontation has apparently made a significant impact." Elena allowed herself a small, tired smile. "That's good news, at least." "There's more," Marcus continued. "Several smaller trading vessels have requested permission to approach directly. They're curious, apparently, rather than hostile." Elena considered this for a moment. After the tension of the past day, the idea of simple, peaceful curiosity felt almost strange. "Grant permission, cautiously. Let's not squander any opportunity for genuine connection." As Marcus relayed her instructions, Elena stepped away from the bridge for a moment, walking slowly through the familiar corridors of her ship. She found herself once again near the observation deck, where her daughter Maya sat quietly, sketching the stars as she often did. "Any news?" Maya asked without looking up from her notebook. "Some," Elena replied, sitting beside her daughter. "It seems some of the people out there are starting to see us differently. Not as monsters, but as something else." Maya glanced up, curiosity bright in her young eyes. "Guardians, maybe? Like the stories Grandma used to tell us about people who protect instead of destroy?" Elena considered her daughter's words carefully, memories of her grandmother's stories drifting through her mind. "Maybe," she said softly. "Maybe that's exactly what we can become, regardless of whatever our ancestors were in the past." As mother and daughter sat together, watching the quiet stars beyond the reinforced window, neither of them noticed the distant, gathering shadow slowly approaching from the far edge of the system, a shadow that would soon test humanity's newfound reputation far more severely than a single unauthorized attack ever could. Hours later, the ship's alarm sounded once more, sharp and urgent, cutting through the calm that had briefly settled over the Ark Hollow. "Captain to the bridge," the AI announced firmly. "Multiple large vessels detected approaching rapidly from the outer system." Elena rushed quickly back to the bridge, her heart pounding with renewed tension. "Report," she demanded as she arrived. 6 heavily armed vessels significantly larger than anything previously encountered, the AI reported. "Configuration suggests a coordinated military force, not an independent action like the previous attack." Marcus's expression tightened with concern. "Captain, this doesn't look like another isolated incident. This looks organized." Commander Dral Voss's voice came urgently over the comm system moments later, his tone grave. "Captain Reyes, I must warn you immediately. Those vessels belong to a faction within the Drenari remnant that has rejected diplomatic efforts entirely. Unlike Captain Vaughn's unauthorized action, this appears to be a deliberate, planned assault." Elena's stomach tightened. "How many ships and how much firepower are we dealing with?" 6 warships, each significantly more advanced than the vessel you encountered previously, Dral reported grimly. "Individually, your ship might withstand 1 or 2. Together, their combined firepower could overwhelm even your defenses." Elena's mind raced, weighing every option carefully. Retreating was not truly possible, not with a ship as massive and comparatively slow as the Ark Hollow. Fighting 6 advanced warships simultaneously carried enormous risk, both to her ship and to the fragile, newly forming trust between humanity and the wider galaxy. "Commander Voss," Elena said firmly, "can your forces assist us?" There was a brief, heavy pause before Dral responded. "My ship alone would not be enough to significantly alter the odds. However, I have already alerted the Council. If they authorize intervention quickly enough, additional support may arrive in time." "And if it doesn't?" Elena asked quietly. Dral's silence answered the question clearly enough. Elena turned to her crew, her expression calm despite the danger rapidly approaching. "All hands, prepare for combat readiness. Divert maximum power to shields and defensive systems. I want every available weapon system ready, but understand clearly, we fire only if fired upon first." As her orders spread quickly throughout the ship, tension gripped every deck. Farmers abandoned their crops temporarily, moving to emergency stations. Engineers worked frantically, reinforcing critical systems. Parents gathered children close, offering quiet reassurance despite their own fear. Maya found her way quickly to her mother's side on the bridge, her young face pale but determined. "Mom, what's happening?" Elena knelt briefly beside her daughter, taking her hands gently. "We're facing a difficult moment, Maya. But I need you to be brave. Just a little longer." Maya nodded firmly, swallowing her fear. "I trust you, Mom." Elena stood once more, turning back to the approaching threat displayed clearly on the main screen. 6 massive warships continued closing in steadily, their combined firepower more than enough to threaten the very survival of everyone aboard the Ark Hollow. Aboard the lead attacking vessel, a stern, calculating commander named Vess Draymore studied the massive human ship ahead with cold, determined eyes. Unlike Sarek Vaughn, driven by personal grief and anger, Draymore's motivations were far more calculated, a deliberate attempt to eliminate what he perceived as humanity's dangerous potential before it could grow into an even greater threat. "Target confirmed," Draymore said coldly. "Prepare all vessels for coordinated assault. We end this quickly, before diplomatic interference can complicate matters further." His officers moved swiftly, coordinating precise attack patterns designed to overwhelm even the Ark Hollow's formidable defenses. Weapon systems across all 6 ships began charging steadily, preparing for a devastating, simultaneous strike. "Commander," one officer said cautiously, "should we not attempt communication first? The Council has not authorized this action." Draymore's expression remained hard and unwavering. "The Council debates while danger grows unchecked. Sometimes difficult decisions must be made without waiting for permission." As his fleet closed the final distance toward the Ark Hollow, Draymore gave the order he believed necessary to protect the wider galaxy from a threat he was convinced would eventually prove catastrophic. Fire. 6 simultaneous blasts of concentrated energy shot rapidly across space, converging directly upon the Ark Hollow's shields. The ship shuddered violently under the combined force of the attack, alarms blaring loudly throughout every deck. "Shields down to 63%, Marcus reported urgently, gripping his console tightly against the shaking deck. "They're preparing a second volley," the AI announced. Elena's mind raced, calculating quickly. A second combined strike of that magnitude could potentially breach their shields entirely, exposing critical systems to direct damage. "Divert all remaining power to shields," Elena ordered immediately. "Tomas, I need options now." Thomas's voice came urgently over the comm system. "Captain, if I redirect power from our secondary weapon systems entirely into a single defensive countermeasure, similar to before but scaled up significantly, we might be able to disable multiple enemy weapon systems simultaneously. But it will leave us completely defenseless for several critical seconds." Elena weighed the risk carefully, aware that hesitation could prove fatal. "Do it, Thomas. Prepare the countermeasure." As engineering worked urgently to configure the massive defensive pulse, the enemy fleet's weapons reached full charge once more, preparing a second, potentially devastating strike. "Ready, Captain," Tomas's voice confirmed urgently. "Fire now," Elena commanded. A powerful, precisely calculated pulse of energy shot outward from the Ark Hollow, spreading rapidly across the 6 approaching warships. Sparks erupted violently across multiple vessels simultaneously as their weapon systems overloaded and shut down completely. "Direct hits confirmed on all 6 vessels," the AI reported. "Enemy weapon systems disabled. No lasting damage to enemy hulls." Marcus stared at the screen in stunned disbelief. "Captain, you disabled an entire attacking fleet without destroying a single ship." Elena allowed herself a brief moment of relief before quickly refocusing on the unfolding situation. "Hail Commander Draymore's vessel," she ordered firmly. Moments later, Draymore's stern face appeared on the main screen, his expression tight with barely controlled anger and confusion. "You could have destroyed my entire fleet," Draymore said slowly, clearly struggling to reconcile this restraint with his own deeply held assumptions. "We told you already," Elena replied calmly. We are not here to prove ourselves through destruction. We are here to prove that true strength lies in restraint, not cruelty. Draymore studied her carefully, his hardened expression slowly shifting into something closer to genuine confusion and reluctant respect. Perhaps, he said quietly, I misjudged your people. As Draymore's disabled fleet slowly retreated, unharmed but thoroughly humbled, word of the Ark-Hollow's restraint spread rapidly once more across the region, carried quickly through hidden communication channels, whispered cautiously among traders, diplomats, and curious observers alike. Hours later, calm finally returned to the Ark-Hollow, the immediate danger past. Elena stood once again on the observation deck, watching quietly as Commander Dralvoss's ship approached calmly, no longer cautious or suspicious, but genuinely curious and respectful. Captain Reyes, Dral's voice came warmly over the comm system. The Council has authorized formal diplomatic contact. Word of your restraint, shown twice now under considerable provocation, has significantly shifted opinion across the region. Elena smiled softly, relief and cautious optimism mingling within her exhausted expression. That's very good news, Commander. Many still hold questions about your ship's history and the mysterious fleet connected to the Kryl War. Dral continued carefully. But perhaps in time, understanding and trust can replace fear and suspicion. That is exactly what we hope for, Elena replied honestly. As the conversation ended, Elena stepped quietly back toward the observation window, finding Maya once again seated peacefully nearby, sketching the stars with quiet concentration. Everything all right now, Mom? Maya asked, glancing up curiously. Elena sat beside her daughter, gazing out at the vast, endless stars stretching before them. For now, yes, she said softly. But this is only the beginning, Maya. We have much still to learn about ourselves, our history, and the galaxy waiting out there. Maya considered this quietly, then smiled gently. Maybe that's all right, though. Maybe it's better to discover who we truly are, rather than simply accepting what others believe about us. Elena squeezed her daughter's hand gently, comforted by her wisdom. You might be right, sweetheart. As mother and daughter sat together, watching the peaceful stars stretch endlessly beyond their ship's scarred, weathered hull, word of humanity's restraint, compassion, and quiet strength continued spreading steadily across the galaxy. No longer simply feared as a monster from forgotten history, the Ark-Hollow slowly began earning a new reputation, one built not on destruction, but on mercy, patience, and quiet, steady strength. The galaxy's fear had not vanished entirely, but for the first time since their arrival, hope had finally taken root. A hope that humanity's true legacy might yet be defined, not by the monster it once seemed to be, but by the guardian it was steadily, quietly becoming. And as the Ark-Hollow continued its slow, steady journey deeper into the vast unknown, Elena Reyes stood proudly at the helm of her ship, ready to face whatever challenges awaited, confident now more than ever that her people's true strength lay not in the power to destroy, but in the wisdom and compassion to protect. The end.